Hello there guys, Wayne here from Luna's World. I hope you're well, and in this video we're going to be exploring the possibilities of virtual reality in X-Plane 11. And this video is really for people who are struggling to get any decent frames or performance issues with Fly Inside. It's also for people who are maybe sitting on the fence with VR. They want to find out more information before they take the plunge. And yeah, now there's a caveat that needs to go before all this. You have to pay for Fly Inside XP. I happen to think that it's totally worth the money, even with X-Plane native VR coming very soon. Certainly the beta is coming very soon. I had a notification today to say that. I would still recommend getting it because, again, if it's beta, we don't know how long it's going to take to be good. We don't know what it's going to be like. It's looking very positive, and but if you really want to get stuck into VR right now, you're going to need Fly Inside for XP. Now, as well as that, you're obviously going to need a copy of X-Plane 11. That might sound silly, but you'll be surprised. So make sure you've got X-Plane 11. This isn't a video about any other simulator or VR. So yeah, the other thing you're going to need is Oculus Trait tool, which is it's a program that is free. The link will be in the description. It helps you to tweak things graphically and the power settings and all that stuff. It's a really handy little tool, so I recommend getting that. And the other thing that you need to get hold of is your settings file, INI file for Fly Inside, and the location of that will be in your main drive, users, your name, and then app data, roaming, and then Fly Inside, and then you'll see settings pro Fly Inside XP _ settings.ini. Now we're going to do a couple of tweaks in here that I found on the forum, which worked really well for me. So without further ado, let's get into this now. It depends on your hardware whether this is going to work best for you, but hopefully by the end of the video you'll have a good idea about what you need in terms of getting VR up and running, and also maybe it will give you the information of how to tweak things and get things going, because there's a lot of stuff working here together, and things are not always stable, especially if you get X-Plane in a beta state and all that kind of good stuff. Fly Inside right now is Fly Inside 1.9, which is a beta, but nevertheless it kind of works for me. I did have some problems initially, but those problems have gone away, and I don't know why. I don't know, maybe I've changed some mods or whatever, but yeah, it seems to be all working really well now. So yeah, so let's have a look at Fly Inside first. Now to do this, I'm obviously going to have to put the headset on, and you're going to see my head movements. I'll try and keep that to a minimum, but let's explore what all the options are in Fly Inside. Okay guys, so we're inside Fly Inside now, and this is the menu that comes up. So I've just clicked on settings, and we're going to go through each one of these things. And, you know, caveat again, I don't confess to be an expert on the ins and outs of all this stuff from a technical perspective, but I have spent a lot of time fiddling with it and trying to get the most out of it. And I'm just going to share what the results have been for me. And of course, it might vary on your system. So resolution, you'll see that we've the highest resolution it goes up to is 3840 by 2374. I recommend when you first run Fly Inside, just start it on one that's not the top one, and just maybe run the default settings, whatever settings it's selected. Try that and give it a go. See what kind of frames you get. Is it smooth? And then go from there. Now, Oculus, enable Oculus. This is asynchronous time warp. At least I think it is. I have this disabled. If you enable that, what happens is it will limit your frame rates to 45. And really, in order for this to run well, you've got to try and aim for 90. Now, 90 is pretty impossible in X-Plane. So asynchronous time warp mode does something very clever to trick your brain into thinking you're getting 90 FPS. Now, I don't know how it does it. It's probably to do with left and right eyes and doubling up one. I don't know. I can't sort of confess to know the technical ins and outs. So, but what I've noticed, if that's checked, it will limit it to 45, whereas if it's unchecked, you'll get up to 90. Which is what we want. I recommend keeping this on low speed, high stability, just for now. The monitor display, this is your outside monitor view. So if you're recording, obviously like I do, you want this on unlimited. At the moment, I've just got it on 30. I leave FXAA anti-aliasing off. And I also leave the VR optimizations off, and my MSA is on ×4. Now, field of view overdraw is really important. Now, you see I've got it set at 90. If I increase this, what happens in the headset is that my field of view gets wider and wider and wider and wider. Now, which you would think is a good thing. One way of getting around the limitations of the actual hardware is to decrease this. Now, what that means inside the headset is that you're going to get more of a kind of binocular effect or barn door effect, whatever you want to call it. So now I can see that my view has got a kind of a box around it. Now, the benefit of doing that is that you'll actually decrease the pixelation in the view. So that's a bit of a trade-off. I don't mind the boxy feel. I kind of, you get used to it. It's a bit like the bezels on a 3-monitor screen. You know, after a while, they just kind of disappear, or at least it doesn't bug you anymore. So I would prefer a little bit more resolution or a little bit less pixelation. And in order to do that, I have to put up with this slightly boxy effect. So that's just a limitation of the technology right now. Obviously, that will be eliminated at some point pretty soon, I would imagine. So scrolling down, the rest of the stuff is just to do with the practicalities of... Sorry, my tracking's a bit off now. I don't know why. I've got probably my monitor in the way or something. Anyway, there we go. So mouse and tooltips. Now, this is actually quite a useful thing. I have 3D mouse enabled because... using the mouse when you're in VR is actually quite handy, and it's a great way of actually checking things and unchecking things and turning lights on and stuff if you haven't got any hardware, or if you can't get used to pressing buttons and you don't know what they are because you've got the headset on. So 3D mouse is good. Now, it comes up pretty big sometimes when it's in certain positions. So I would say what you want to do is to hide the mouse when it's not moved. So you would want to check that as well so that it disappears. Show tooltips. Actually, I don't normally have that checked. I would turn that off. And then that's irrelevant. Mirror window is to do with basically what you're seeing now. So I'm mirroring what I'm seeing in the headset, and it's coming out on the screen. That's how you can record this. Obviously, you don't want to see both eyes because you're going to have that kind of VR effect where you're watching VR on a flat screen. It comes up with two pictures. Windows. Now, this is cool. You can import Windows into the VR environment. So, for example, if I'm at a particular airfield and I want the airfield chart, or I want a landing information or whatever, you can actually import Windows in PDFs and whatever, and have them inside your cockpit, inside VR. Very, very cool. You can position that window wherever you like. You can change the size of the border. You can get rid of the window border. Very, very cool. Very powerful stuff. Color levels, I've messed around with that a bit. That's just personal preference. Leap motion, not applicable. Head position, you set up basically a reset view and all that stuff. World scale, just 100%. I'd leave it there. Wouldn't mess with that. Virtual desktop, haven't messed around with that much. That's pretty much it. Oculus feedback, all that stuff there, and that's pretty much it. Now, if you go to bindings, this is where you can choose how you get to this menu. For me, if I press the Oculus Touch button A, this menu will come up. and I can recenter my head position in VR just by pressing that button, and it does it without having to go into this menu here. So that's all very cool. You can also do views and stuff, which I haven't really done much myself, but there you go, head tracking, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. If you click on Sim, this is where you import windows. So you click there and you can drag them in, and you can change the size and move them around once you're actually in the environment. Very, very cool. So let's go back to settings. I'm going to go to the top here. Now I've got a trick to increase this resolution. So let's show you that, and then we'll pop back in here in a second, and I'll show you how to increase this resolution. Okay, so we'll go ahead and open up our settings.ini file, which you can see there where it's located. It's in the roaming folder. Now, app data is a hidden folder, so you might have to show hidden files if you're not seeing that already. Oops, let me just pause this. So roaming and then fly inside, and then it's in there. So let me drag this across. Now, here are the tweaks that you need to put in. Let me pull across this other notepad here. Now yours isn't going to look exactly like this. You're going to have different figures. Now this is the first tweak you need to put in. Oculus target resolution 4752 by 2675. Obviously there's no times there, so you just copy that in, put it under graphics. The other two tweaks you need to do is change overdraw to 1.04, which I have done right there. The thing you need to do is MSAA equals 0, so put that in, and FXAA2 equals 1. And then that's pretty much it. So if we close that and we go back into the fly inside environment. Okay, so here we are back in the fly inside environment. Now, if we go over to settings now, you'll see here that we have that resolution that we selected in the ini file there. And then everything else that we've done in the ini file should be set. Now, you might have to experiment with 104% because that's what that is. You might want to drag that back even more to suit your own tastes. Actually, I prefer it at about 90, but start with 100 or 104 and go from there. Now, I've just noticed that this hasn't been enabled, which it should be. So just double check that those tweaks that you've done have actually happened. Okay, so this is the Oculus Trait tool. Now what you can do here, it's really all about the super sampling. Now this will increase the density of pixels so that the pixelation becomes less. Again, don't ask me how it does it. It doesn't do it physically. Obviously it's to do with software. I'm guessing the gaps between the pixels, the higher the number here, the gaps between the pixels become less, and so visually you will obviously see less pixelation. So I've kind of been messing around with this. I think for me, I keep it on 1.2. Oh dear, it's crashed. But anyway, let's just continue there. That seems to work well for me. Any higher and I see quite a performance decrease. But again, just try things out. Go slowly and increase it one at a time. Now, again, I just keep this on auto. That determines whether it's going to be half 90 FPS with the asynchronous time warp. And voice commands I don't bother with. Everything else I don't bother with. Tray tool. You can get it to start up with Windows. Again, I don't worry about that. Oh. Well, okay, something weird's going on here. Normally, this would give you a high power performance, which we need to click on. I don't know why that's not happening. I'm getting the ring of death there, so maybe I need to reinstall Oculus Trait tool. You can again disable your suspending of USB ports, which I definitely recommend you do. and you can start and stop the service here and all that good stuff. So, oh, there's an update. That's probably why. Anyway, this is a good tool. This will definitely help with the resolution. So give that an install as well and see how you go with that. Okay, so welcome to the Cessna with the G1000 in, and a couple of things. So first of all, it's looking pretty crisp in here. I'm quite liking the frame rates. I don't know what we're getting, 25. Okay, but that's taken us above 90 most of the time. If we just let it more or less mostly above 90, that's a good thing. That's very flyable. Now, a couple of things to consider when you're flying in VR. You've got to make sure that your seating position is right. Now, obviously, from this position here, if I look down, it's quite hard to read those numbers. So if you press the period key, that's going to move you forward and put you in a much more realistic position. Now, those numbers on there are perfectly fine to read to me. Hopefully that comes across in the video. So, okay, so I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm just going to move my view up a little bit. We'll do a little flight. Now, I'm holding the mic at the same time as doing this, so don't judge me on my flying skills as I'm doing this with one hand and the throttle and everything else. So pay attention to any stutters that you might see. Let's just look around. My experience in the headset is perfectly fine. Really quite good, actually, quite smooth. There's a few jagged lines. I might have to increase the anti-aliasing. But apart from that, it's all running pretty smooth in here and very, very flyable. And I can read the dials, no problem at all. I could probably even come forward a little bit. I still feel like I'm probably a little bit far back. But yeah, perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. So, guys, let me just pause the sim here. I hope this has been useful in some way. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the ins and outs of VR and all the technical things, but I have spent quite a bit of time doing quite a bit of research on how to get the most out of your Oculus Rift. So I hope some of those tips have been useful. Let me know if you've got any tips, if I've missed any, or if you don't agree with anything that I've done. I'm very much open to suggestions, and I'm not suggesting that this is the best way of doing things. It depends on a lot of different factors, and you know, as with all tweaking, I highly recommend you just run everything default first of all and see where you're at with that, and then go from there. Change one thing at a time, and if it has negative results, change it back, you know, and do it pretty scientifically, and I think you'll get some pretty pleasing results. Of course, you need a system that is capable of VR. Otherwise, hopefully you're not watching this video. But to me, I would say, I know that the 1050 Ti is VR capable, but I would say if you can, go to at least a 1070, and of course the ultimate would be the 1080 Ti for the ultimate experience. But that's about it, guys. The only other thing to say is that, like I said right at the beginning, native VR in X-Plane 11 is pretty close. I'm hoping that we might go into beta before Christmas. That's certainly the impression that I've got reading around, but again, don't quote me on that. But they have said in the first quarter of next year for it to actually be a final release, which is really exciting. I guess the question is, do you invest in £30 or whatever it is to get Fly Inside to get up and running right now? My recommendation is that yes, you should do that, because you know, Fly Inside is an excellent piece of software. It makes all this possible. Takes a bit of tweaking. Hopefully this video has helped in that, and I hope that when you experience it, you will feel like you have done the right thing. I certainly feel like that, and I'm looking forward to X-Plane native VR, of course. I can't wait for that and see how that's implemented. I've done a video on exploring VR with Aerofly FS2, which already does have native VR. So if you don't have X-Plane, but you want a really good VR experience, you're not too worried about being able to fly anywhere in the world and have loads and loads and loads of highly detailed aircraft, then I would recommend Aerofly FS2, purely because the native VR in that is excellent. But of course, that platform, as of the time of this recording, doesn't have the flexibility and all the third-party add-ons that X-Plane does. And yeah, so anyway, I'm kind of rambling, guys, so I hope that's been worthwhile. I hope you've enjoyed it. As ever, please give me a thumbs up and please like the video, and comment in the comment section as to how your success has been, and if you've got any VR tips for me in X-Plane 11. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you all very soon. Take care.